Hello and welcome to Talking Law, the podcast where you can hear barristers, judges, solicitors, managing partners and more talk about their careers and lives in law. I'm Sally Penni, MBE. I'm a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers in Manchester and I'm the founder of Women in the Law UK. Talking of which, you can now buy tickets for both the annual dinner and the Women in the Law UK conference. To find out more, visit womeninthelawuk.com. This episode is supported by CBRE, the leading global provider of commercial real estate services and investments. Find out more at cbre.com. This week, I'm thrilled to be joined by the Legal Chief Operating Officer for CBRE, Chad Doellinger. Chad has had a long and successful career in the law and has also held a teaching position at the Chicago Law School since 2003. I called Chad at his office in Texas to find out more about CBRE and what his role entails.
We are a global real estate company, though we do so much more than just real estate. So we have three different business segments. We have one that is the more traditional real estate, commercial real estate, leasing and selling and whatnot. We have a segment called Global Workplace Solutions, which helps service buildings and facilities. And then we have Global Investors, which is a global investment fund management company as well. So we are incredibly diverse in what we do. We're in over 100 countries globally with about 100,000 employees. So what do I do within the company? My role has been expanding over time. So I have four different functional areas within legal that I oversee. I am the global head of litigation, so responsible for all litigation globally for the company. I'm also the head of global intellectual property. I run or oversee the Legal Operations Center of Excellence, which also has a global footprint. And then I recently started overseeing the insurance and claims division as well. So those are my four functional areas that report up through me.
Wow. Now, Chad, just before I move on to some of the questions I want to ask you, and before I do, people think I do a lot, but actually you've got 4 kids. Have you got 4 dogs as well?
I have 4 kids and 4 dogs.
Oh my gosh. And then also you lecture at the University of Chicago, right? At the law school there.
I do. This January will be my 20th year of lecturing at the University of Chicago Law School, which has been sort of a hobby of mine. So you throw in the 4 kids and the 4 dogs and the hobby of teaching. It's a pretty full life and a pretty busy household that we have.
Absolutely. And one more thing I want you to top it, because you've certainly beaten me at this. In lockdown, you co-authored a book with your daughter.
Yeah, so I have 4 kids. I have one in college who's going to be graduating in next week, actually.
Wow, that's university.
University, yes. So at the university, so she graduates next week. We go to Arkansas to go to her graduation. We have 2 which are in high school, and then we have 1 who's quite young, still in the 1st grade. So during the COVID lockdown, my middle daughter, so at the time I think a high school freshman, came to me, and she's an avid reader. She actually has a book podcast with her mother they do every week, and they're both avid readers. And she said, I would really like to try to write a book during the lockdown. I said, great. She said, I'd like to do it with you. And I said, even better. So I got the chance when we were all locked down to every week do a couple of chapters together with my daughter, which was so much fun. So we then self-published this book together, which is now out there. And it was just a really great experience spending time with my high school daughter.
Wow. I mean, I just think you're amazing to be able to have that. And I'm going to ask you about well-being. But Chad, can we go back to the beginning? Where did your inspiration for law come from? Or I often say a love of the law, because I think that's just a term that I use for my own experience. But where did that kind of desire for you to practice law and come into law come from? And how did you end up being, General Counsel?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So I grew up in a small Iowa town. My father was a pastor at a local church, and my mother was a preschool teacher. And for whatever reason, from little on, the idea of being a lawyer always had this innate appeal to me. So I liked sort of the idea of, arguing and or debating, I might say, and doing things to make a difference. And that just sort of stayed with me throughout, as I grew up in high school and college. And there was a time in college where I debated. The other passion I had was one for philosophy. So when in college, I was toying with either going to law school or getting the PhD in philosophy. And I ultimately chose law school and was very happy I did. And it just sort of has been a passion of mine ever since. And I think what it was having a profession where you really can make a difference within our country, within our world, in a sort of a fair process, in a way to allow people to have a voice and to be heard and to make changes throughout our system, and just had a real innate appeal for those reasons.
Wow. I mean, that's really brilliant. And tell me, how did the move come about that you became general counsel? Because I still don't feel as though in kind of the private sector we know enough about becoming GC. I interviewed the GC for the World Bank, for example. And it's quite an interesting route to get there. What was kind of your route? If I wanted to become a GC, and where did your route start, if you like?
Absolutely. And to be clear, so I'm a deputy general counsel, so I still have a boss who is the general counsel of the company. But
it's a small semantics. It's fine.
It is. I just want to be clear. But I always tell people, don't necessarily follow my path. If you check me out on LinkedIn, I have moved around a lot. So I've bounced around from law firms to companies, back to law firms. And the reason I've done that, and this, I guess I'll give credit to my wife for, every couple of years, we would sit down and talk about, whether I feel like I'm in the right place professionally, whether I'm happy, whether, I'm still being challenged, or whether something new might be out there that's interesting to me. And, each of those changes I've made was for a very specific reason, but it sort of allowed me to gather a really broad set of skills, right? So I've worked in boutiques, I've specialized in IP, I've gone to broader litigation firms, gone to big global law firms. I worked at, the world's largest company at Walmart. And with all of those experiences, I think it gave me the background to come into a role like this, where I'm doing a variety of things, managing, a lot of people. But I think it's just that diversity of background that really helped get me to where I am today.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Now, with that experience, and you have been at, and you've been to other massive firms as well, Cattons and Greenberg, Turing, and people like that. But with that, you've brought with you a skill set, leadership. And I had the opportunity of experiencing at CBRE your stand down day for diversity. And there I saw actually that you weren't just, talking the talk. You were walking the walk. So can you just help me out with why diversity is so important at CBRE, a global organization in such a way, because it's not just a tick boxing exercise there. And that comes, it's a quote really from Lucy and Banky, some of the people in your team there who are not just singing you up. You've been a fantastic ally on it. Where do you see diversity as playing an impact in global organizations?
And no, I think I'll answer maybe in two ways. One is the company, one is myself personally. I mean, I think with the company, it very much is what I would call a top-down leadership approach, right? That our most senior executives, both in legal as well as within the business, understand how important diversity is, not just because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but because it really does make you a better company. So it is something that, when you have a variety of people and perspectives and viewpoints all sitting around the table and feeling as though they belong at that table, it leads to much better outcomes and results and work products. And look, and this, but it is no longer in debate right? That diversity adds value. So I think it is that for the company, we have very senior leaders who understand that it does make us a better company, and they understand it is the right thing to do. And I think to me, that is that combination being both the right thing and the right thing for the company, the right thing morally is why it is so powerful here at CBRE.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's fantastic. But having said that, you're in the States and, I'm in England, a small island surrounded by water. I just wonder, when you've talked about top-down leadership, and it's often that's what we talk about here, leading from the top, and they will trickle down to the companies. And you're doing it. I just wondered if you got any tips maybe for organizations and companies maybe of a similar size to yours or smaller who are thinking, gosh, where do we start with all of this? The moral argument sounds great when we talk about diversity, but actually, where do we start beyond doing, drinks parties, events, or having a paralegal at the end? Sometimes you've got like a team of 8 lawyers who have been instructed, because sometimes you need to do that. I know you're intellectual property, but you sometimes need to instruct into external counsel. And then you have like 8 blokes and then paralegal at the end who might tick the diversity box. So I'm just wondering, are there any tips or ideas that you've got perhaps for anybody who's thinking, where do we start? What little things can we do?
Yeah, no, I have some. And I think the first thing I would say is to do something, right? Don't have this, paralysis by analysis that, where to begin. You keep talking and thinking and nothing ever happens. So I think do something and start is the first. And starting is always the hardest thing.
Yes.
The other thing that I think has really helped our company and our department is to go beyond the aspirational. I've often seen in programs about diversity, you have a bunch of people, sitting around a table talking, everyone in violent agreement that, yes, it's very important. Yes, we all agree we should improve and get better. And then you all go and do your day jobs and nothing ever happens, right? So get beyond the aspirational to have measurable goals and track what you're doing, right? If you don't actually have goals that you can be judged against and tracking, getting good data, you'll never sort of get beyond that aspirational agreement that, yes, it's important, but are you actually making an impact or not? So I would say try to get good data. For example, we hire a lot of law firms, a lot of external counsel, and we are really striving, in 2023 to have much better, cleaner data when it comes to not just who we're hiring, but who's actually doing the work and who's getting credit for the work being done. So it is really understanding your data and then being able to measure how you're performing against that. And the other thing I would say is having a place where people can talk about ideas, beyond the standout day, which you joined us for, and thank you for that.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. For the last couple of years, we have been having what are called monthly diversity dialogues. So we'll take an hour over the lunch hour. Anybody can attend. It's optional, not required. And when we get together, there's no titles, there's no hierarchy, but we have a place, we have a safe forum where people can engage in those difficult discussions, and we learn from each other. We understand each other better. We talk about, controversial topics sometimes, but it's a place to actually do that because, I think many of us are very well-intentioned, but I may be doing or saying something that is either harmful or not productive. Unless someone says to me, hey, Chad, when you say it like that, or when you do that, are you aware it might have this impact? Oh, I never thought of it that way. And just sharing those perspectives in an open forum like that has been incredibly valuable to make people feel as though they can be their authentic selves when they come to work.
Yes. And it's so important. And to bring their whole selves to work, where, as you say, they could contribute in other ways and have the conversations. It's so crucial. I think I'm kind of going off topic now, but back to the law, because I'm just so passionate about diversity. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Chad, was about, who inspires you to sort of carry on, right? It is, this is a podcast about legal leaders in the field of law. That's what this podcast is about. That's what, it's got over 200,000 listeners or whatever it is. But who inspires you to carry on? Because we can all get a bit fatigued, can't we, in our jobs, in whatever ways that we're doing it.
Yeah, I will answer that maybe three different ways. Spoken like a lawyer, 1, 2, and 3. I think early on, sort of my passion for philosophy, as well as a lot of combination. I was a big fan of H.L.A. Hart, the jurisprudential philosopher. I thought just his way of writing was so clear, and the way he sort of structured his arguments was just really impactful. So from an academic perspective, I would say H.L.A. Hart. Personally, when I got to law school, one of my first professors was Guido Calabresi. So the Honorable Judge Calabresi from the Second Circuit, the former dean of my law school. He still is, but just such a brilliant person. But beyond his utter brilliance, I mean, this is somebody who was dean of Yale Law School, a Second Circuit federal judge, just an incredible scholar who sort of transformed the area of tort law. But he was an even better person. Just one of the most thoughtful, compassionate, caring, supportive individuals while in law school. I still am close to this day with Guido. So he was just somebody who really inspired me to realize you can always sort of do more to help people and just be a good human being before you're a lawyer. So that was the one. The third one is just the people I see around me. The people at the company, the people on my teams. This stand down day you talk about was led by 4 of my college, 4 volunteers, Whitney, Samantha, Valerie, and Lucy, right? Who just gave up such enormous amounts of their times with their full day job and did this. And the fact that people at all different levels in the company cared so much to put in this time and put on an event like that to me is what's inspiring. So just the everyday people you work with who are so committed and doing so much, that's to me what's incredible.
I mean, that's amazing. Chad, whilst we're talking about, that's so inspirational, those 3 people, 3 occasions, and big shout out to Lucy, who's brilliant and may have just about to give birth, I think, by the time this comes out. Yes. I wanted to ask you about, whilst we're talking about inspiration, who's your kind of favorite legal character? Maybe that you've answered it already in your professor at Yale, but I just wonder if you've got a favorite legal character and a favorite book. Again, I feel like you've answered them, but I just wondered if you could share any of those with us. And indeed, if someone was going to play you, imagine you're in Suits. I know it's totally unreal, isn't it? But if someone was going to play you, who would you like it to be? So you've got like 3 questions there. If you want to add to the book, you can.
I will pick and choose. So I think I will start with answering the book question. I think I've talked a little bit about sort of, legal characters, people that I like, and I will let others decide who should play me. That's probably a better question for my family or colleagues. But in terms of my book, one that is towards the top of my list is the book Wonder. And that book is a young adult book. We read it as a family, and the story, the main character is a boy who has significant facial deformities, and sort of how he overcame or sort of learned to live a life which was, quote, normal, a phrase I don't like. Yeah. And we read that as a family, and it was incredibly impactful. So that was one. And, I have a son who struggles with autism. So it's just having a disabled child who has to overcome challenges that maybe you and I take for granted really resonated. And it sort of also ties into the topic of diversity, because I think, often we think of diversity in a fairly narrow sense, right? Race or gender. But when you start thinking about things like disability or abilities, as we now call them, and things of that sort, mental health and well-being. So for that reason, that book really just was very impactful to our family and
Yes.
just also an incredibly good read.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really good points you make there, Chad. And also about inclusion. We often just talk about diversity, but actually we need inclusion. And the point about your son and that book, because it is such a powerful book. It makes me cry a lot, actually. When I first read it, it is really powerful and it's really spot on.
But I would say, I would also add that, I think we are now trying to move past inclusion to to a concept of belonging, right? Because I think sometimes of inclusion is, this is my table. Why don't you come and join me at the table, right?
Yeah.
But really what we want is everyone belongs at the table. It's not anyone's table who's inviting others to come. It is everyone belongs and has a place there. So I think we've sort of gone from diversity to inclusion is now a sense of belonging. And that's what I think I'll be striving for, is that sense of belonging.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm just writing that down because I think you're absolutely spot on. Because of course you can be at the table, but if you don't feel you belong, then nothing has been achieved. That's really powerful, really powerful. Chad, what do you do for well-being? You're in litigation. It's long hours, right? I'm in crime and employment. The long hours, but I'm not, running a global company, so to speak. I'm a self-employed and I wear, horsehair when I go to work. And I have a few hobbies that, like you, outside, doing, podcasts and women in the law and stuff. But what do you do for wellness and to kind of have balance? Because I see a theme of family. Your family is really important to you. And as a lawyer, you actually get to see them. Unlike, a lot of lawyers who will say, oh, well, I've got to where I am and I had a very good nanny and, they had X number of difficulties in relationships and so on. It's a difficult place to be sometimes. So I wonder, how have you kept grounded, or what have you done for your wellness or well-being?
That's a great question. A couple of things. I think first of all, family is the most important to me. So my wife and kids, and I think over the course of my career, I've always made a point of spending time with my family. So I was somebody who would leave my firm to go to a parent teacher conference or to go to some play or some soccer game or whatnot. And it was something I wanted to, but I also thought it was important because as I got to be more established in my firms, I think having younger lawyers see a more senior lawyer do those things was important, right? And I think it's something where I was very vocal about doing those things, and I still am. I will tell my team, I'm taking the morning off to go have lunch at my daughter's school. And you should do the same. But I think it's important that whatever the outlet is, be it family or friends, or you need to find time away from this job, right? These jobs could be 24/7 every day of the year if you let them. And that's not healthy. So I think it is one, just making time to do those things. The second thing I would say is make sure you enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the people you're around. So I've moved around some jobs better than others, but what I've learned is that, those maybe 10 people around you at work significantly impact how much you enjoy or don't enjoy the job. Or if you really enjoy your colleagues, your peers, the folks you're working with, it's a pretty good job then. If you don't, it can be very long. So make sure you're at a place where you actually enjoy what you're doing and you enjoy the people around you. The last thing I would say is I tend to exercise is a way of release. So I, used to be a marathon runner. I don't know that I still am, but I've run marathons. I still enjoy running. So I just think physical fitness is really good for well-being, mental health, and just an outlet for these sorts of very sort of long and stressful jobs that many of us have.
Yeah, no, that's such good advice. I know when I'm getting quite tense and I have, long trial or cases off circuit and you're just kind of like living off coffee, or I haven't been to the gym or a hot yoga class, I think, oh my God, suddenly, I do like a 12-mile walk or something, even though I've got a dog, and you feel like, oh, the weight's kind of lifted off because you've got the miles in. So I think not just exercise, but that's such good advice. And I like the way that you're vocal about it, because just the other day, I was speaking to somebody who said, oh, yes, I have attended nativity plays, but I don't put it in my diary. So it will just be blocked out as blank and nobody knows where I am because they don't want to say. It's a family commitment. So I like the way that you've owned it, like you're saying, yeah, I'm going early because it's a Christmas concert, or, which is something I've got to do tomorrow. I really think that's wonderful.
I think that's important because I think, at least in the States, there is often a double standard between men and women, right? About, going to kids' activities and whatnot. So my thought was, if I can sort of signal that that's good, if I can do that and be very vocal about it, I'm hoping others then feel more comfortable taking time off and doing those things. I really think that's what we've got to get better at. And I just think by, not hiding the fact you're going to go see how silly is that? I'm going to hide the fact I'm going to go see my kids, right? No, you should be proud of the fact you're going to see your kids and go see a play or a football game. So very, very proud of doing those things and hope others sort of also do the same.
Yeah. Oh gosh, spot on. Chad, before I ask you about some advice and guidance and tips for kind of different career levels, I want to just ask you about allyship, right? You're a white man, I'm a short black woman. You can't see how short I am, actually. I'm sitting down. But I'm not Naomi Campbell or, some 6-foot supermodel. I've learned to live with my shortness with some heels. But I just wondered, I talk a lot about allyship and the importance of building allies. So whether it's on gender, whether it's on LGBTQ plus, whether it's on race, I really think we need allies, who don't necessarily look like me. Would you agree? Or do you think, we still need to have safe spaces, which is fine. But, I really think that we need allies that often can just call stuff out. If I'm on a train and I'm being asked to show my tickets again because I'm sitting in first class, although in England the trains are so expensive that no one buys first class anymore, but just on the train, and I'm the only person in the carriage because I'm a black person, it's exhausting to always call something out yourself. But what is good in the workplace is if we can build allies that are active, the lead, that can make an improvement. And I just wondered where you were on the allyship issue.
No, it's interesting because I obviously am very committed to allyship. I'm the executive sponsor of the company's, DE&I work stream within the legal department. So, someone who looks like me doing that obviously raises the issue of allyship. And it's something I've thought a lot about. I've had, over the last couple of years, I've had a couple of people approach me and say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing this because of the way you look, right? Because why shouldn't somebody who is more diverse be doing that? Those are good, honest discussions. I welcome the feedback. I appreciate those discussions. But where I landed was that, this is something which I care a great deal about.
Yeah.
I have a tremendous amount of passion for issues of DE&I for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
And I still think, though I guess maybe somebody else answers the question, I still think having somebody who looks like me, a middle-aged white guy, be somebody out there talking about the issues, promoting these issues, and fighting for the issues is a good thing. It goes back to that discussion earlier with having, if you have 10 people around the table who all look the same way, all sort of violent agreement of how things should change, but, they may not be in the rooms where change can happen. I think having allyship is incredibly helpful. So, I think it is a really important, it's a piece of it. It's not the only piece, it's a piece of it. Yeah. So I think it's incredibly important, but I would love to get your views on whether that's true or not.
Yeah, I think it is no good just having the same people all the time. I say this in respect of gender. Look, I founded an organization which has got 30,000 professional followers on LinkedIn. It's got, 1,000 members, blah, blah, blah. It's global. It's Women in the Law UK, lots of allies anywhere. There's no point talking to just a room full of women about some of the issues on gender, for example, which is a large part of what we do, as well as all the other diversity strands. So I do think we need people who don't look like me. I think we need more people who look like you, advocating and supporting these issues. And I think we need a whole mix of different views and the real perspectives, but it's far more powerful. And it goes back to something that we know. There's a study that says, for example, men are better sponsors than women, and sponsors are different to. I'm not talking about mentoring; they're two different things, and I think yes. you know that. And we kind of live in this space, so perhaps we get it. But I do think that we need. I don't like the term middle-aged white men. I use a different term, which one of my guests on here, Bree Hall Stevens, KC, uses, which is kind of, I can't remember it now. It'll come to me towards the end. But I do agree, actually. I think we've moved on from diversity, that now we need people advocating, and true allyship means actually walking in there. So if you've got a view, I don't know, people might have different views to that which you and I share. By all means, they can comment. So thank you for leading on the issues and being a true ally. Now, Chad, I want to ask you about some tips and guidance for somebody who might be wanting to enter the profession. Any advice and guidance? And then I want to move on to ask for maybe somebody who's kind of mid-career, maybe 10 years call, if you're a barrister plus, or it's different in the States, I know. But, you know, people who might just be getting a bit tired and might be thinking, where am I going with my career? So the entrance, any advice and tips if they want to come into law today? You know, maybe three tips that you might have firstly.
Yeah, happy to. I think the first one is make sure that you like the law. Right. You know, it's something which I am passionate about, as are you, obviously. But I've had a lot of students, colleagues, friends, who realize after some period of time, I don't really enjoy the law. So I would say if there's a way to sort of, you know, intern someplace, find out, do you actually enjoy this? Because it takes up a tremendous amount of time. So do you like the law is number one. Number two, I think young lawyers or soon to be lawyers tend to put too much weight into sort of their first career decision, right? You know, which firm do I go to? You know, what is that first move? And I think we have gone beyond, which may have been the case, you know, 20, 30 years ago. You get out of law school, you go to a firm, you're going to become partner, you retire at that firm 30 years later, right? That's going to be your path. People move around a lot now. And I just think you ought not put so much stress on yourself about what is that first job, because you're likely to have several jobs. And, you know, what you should be thinking about is whatever job you're in, how can you benefit? What can you gain from that? What experiences can you gain? And I think most importantly, who can you meet, right? I'm a huge believer in, as you say, mentorship, sponsorship, championship, all those things. And a big part of this profession is finding people who can help you along the way. So each stop you make, don't lose sight of those connections, the networks, the people who can help you in a variety of capacities. So I would say, you know, A, make sure you like the law. B, don't stress on that first opportunity. And C, really don't lose sight of that network and the importance of meeting and learning from people around you. So those are, I guess, my three tips for the newcomer.
Oh, I love that. Now you've got the established person who, I mean, I know I said knackered, but not everyone is knackered, probably because I haven't done any exercise and I don't run marathons anymore, Chad. But this isn't about me, but one is, you know, one's been in the law for some time and they've been practicing law. I think I see a lot of those people. They're not, you know, they're not gender specific. And they're kind of just looking at where they want to go with their career. And I just wondered if you might have some advice. It may be that, you know, they feel more of an imposter. Maybe they've lost a bit of a love or that enthusiasm, that get up and go feeling. I don't know, but I just wondered, you know, if you had any career advice for the person who's been in the law for a little while.
I think first I would say be intentional about what you do. I'm a big believer in all things in life being intentional. You sometimes see people who just sort of go through the motions of the same thing day after day. They sort of wake up 10 years later and be like, how did I get here? What am I doing? Right. So be intentional about sort of a plan of what you want to accomplish in your career. But I guess maybe the opposite of intentional with that is be flexible. Don't be afraid to listen to opportunities or look for other opportunities. As I said, I've moved around a fair amount, but I've been open to change. And I think being open to change and opportunities can really help you in your career. Don't be so stuck on I'm going to do this the rest of my life that you sort of miss out on some great chances that might happen around you. Yeah. Another one, and this sort of ties into what I said with the newcomer, is find those mentors, those sponsors, people who can give you guidance in your particular path, people who can support you, give you feedback. These jobs are really hard jobs, and we all have areas we have to improve on. In finding somebody you can trust, who can give you that clear and maybe that hard feedback of how to get better. I think we're always striving to improve. And then being open to that, being open to this idea that, yes, I can improve on this or that, and taking that feedback in a constructive way, and striving to get better. The practice of law, I always view it's a journey, right? We're always growing, we're evolving, we're getting better at things, but no one's ever, where they're going to end up. You can always get better at certain things. So being willing to improve and take that feedback is another, I think, really important piece of advice that I've learned over the years.
Yeah. See, I'm writing all these tips down. I hadn't anticipated it. I know, right? Who knew? I'm the interviewer. Right. You need to give a masterclass in the careers. No, I mean they're brilliant, which is why I was writing it down. Right. I think they're really, really fantastic. Chad, we've been talking for a while now, and when I looked up and stalked you on LinkedIn in whatever that mode is, I've learned, and looked at where you've been in the different law firms, in being like, at Walmart. My God, in England, Walmart owned Asda.
Yes.
And so, it's huge. That's like the biggest supermarket in the world or something. And then you've been, done lots of stuff, and now you're a CBRE. So you've had quite a career already, and I just wondered, what's next? Is it becoming, the general counsel? I know I was getting the promotions wrong, but are there more? Have you got a plan? Could it be the bench? Could it be becoming a dean of university in addition to the day job? I just wondered whether what's next, because I think, and you're loving what you're doing, you're having such impact, diversity, but there's so much you could do still, isn't there? Or are you just kind of content?
It's a great question, and it's one where another piece of advice, I guess, is I think sometimes people have too long of a time horizon. I was interviewed years ago for a job interview, and someone said to me, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" And my answer was, "I don't have a clue." And the interviewer sort of paused and looked at me kind of funny. So look, I said, if you had asked me 10 years ago, am I sitting here talking to you for this job? I'd say there'd be no chance, right? So I think sort of thinking long term, it's fine to have goals and ambitions, but it goes back to being open to what's out there, what comes in front of you. So in the short term, I would say I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I just recently taken on this legal operations function. I think there's a tremendous amount of work we can do to help the department, help the company, improve. I just want to keep doing a good job for the company. And then we'll see what happens, what comes after that. But I'm going to still keep teaching. And that to me is probably more of a hobby, I think, at this point, than a long-term career. I think I enjoy interacting with law students. I enjoy, teaching and mentoring, and that's a way I can do that in a different setting. So I will just say, I've been doing this almost 2.5 years now in my current role. Let's see where this takes us, and, let's talk in 5 years and see where we are.
Absolutely. Well, I'm never going to ask you that question because, who knows where either of us will be, but I hope I might ask you actually in 5 years' time. Say, hey, remember, Chad, what are you doing now? Maybe we could revisit all my podcasts.
Let's do that. We'll come back in 5 years and do a follow-up podcast and see where we both are. I'm happy to commit to that right now.
Absolutely right. I've written it down, so it's got to happen.
Yes.
Chad, it's been really wonderful interviewing you, albeit I hope it felt more like a conversation and a chat. And what
Absolutely.
comes brilliant to me is that you're quite a positive person and you're quite confident. Have you always been like that? Have you always had a positive mindset? Or, I know I've sort of chased you down and you're kind of track talking to me, but on a serious note for a moment, because that also affects one's outlook in life, doesn't it? Have you always been that sort of positive person and always confident? And if you weren't, how did you become a confident person?
I think I have. I think my mindset's been very similar. My parents will tell you I've sort of been like this since I've been like 5. I just sort of had the same personality, same demeanor, much of my life. So this is just sort of who I am. But I do think, that's an important part of law. I think an important part of leadership. It's a combination of being confident in your judgments, but also being open to making mistakes. What I often tell the folks on my team is that, by the time decisions reach your desk, there aren't a whole lot of easy decisions left to be made, right? Because the easy ones get made before they get to you. So a big part of leadership is having the confidence to make those decisions, but also to live with the consequences. Things won't always go right. And it's being open to being wrong and sort of living with and being accountable for the mistakes that you do make. So I think that goes sort of hand in glove with leadership, is the confidence with the accountability for maybe when things don't go the way you'd hope they had. Yeah.
And finally, Chad, what do you think makes a good leader? Because I really love everything that you're about. And, I'm always asking these questions all the time on LinkedIn, thought leadership. What's a good leader? And, and when I post it, you get like 7,000 people interacting with it. And I'm like, oh God, I've regretted it now. But, our area of laws are different, you and I, but we're in the same sector. And I just wonder, not just in law, but what for you makes a good leader, do you think?
I love that question. I think about it a lot. I will start with, I think there isn't just one kind of good leadership. I think being a good leader is being authentic to yourself and the people around you. So the way that you might lead might work for you or might not work for me. It always is not who I am. So I think you have to be authentic and genuine, number one. Yeah. But beyond that, I'll tell you my approach to leadership, and we can decide whether it's good or not. But I'll tell you what I view is how I try to lead. I'm a big believer in what is called servant leadership, right? So your job as a leader is to support and serve those that work with you throughout the organization. So it is your job to help others. And that's, I think, being a good leader. I think it is, I talk to my teams, it's about removing impediments and getting out of their way, right? Letting them do their job, letting them shine. You remove the impediments, you help support them, but don't get in their way. Don't sort of be a bottleneck between them and other more senior leaders. Let them get out there and do what they do so well. And I think the last part of it is just being honest. We often talk about in leadership, the hard discussions, right? The feedback, the negative feedback, those aren't hard discussions. People want honest feedback. They want to hear how they're doing. They want to hear how they get better. So just being open and honest and transparent with the people that work with you, that work under your leadership, to me is the way to be an effective leader. So to sort of those are how I view leadership. But again, it's got to be authentic to each person, or else it's simply not going to work.
Yeah. That is superb. Gosh, I had no idea I was going to be writing so many tips here, Chad.
We'll have to come back and talk more about these things, but I very much enjoy talking about them with you as well. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. Oh, Chad, thank you so much. It's been absolutely honor to have you on, and to hear your journey on Talking Law. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure and privilege.
Thanks to Chad for telling me more about his career and life in law. Thanks again to CBRE for supporting this episode. Do visit CBRE.com to learn more about their work in commercial real estate services and investments. I'm pleased to let you know that Women in the Law UK will be hosting 2 events in line with International Women's Day in March. You can join them for International Women's Day dinner on the 9th of March 2023, and on the 10th of March, Women in the Law are running their annual Women Conference. This year, you can learn how to advance and expand your career in law with guest speakers who will be sharing their wisdom on their leadership, communication, and imposter syndrome, and a whole other set of skills. Both are always great events, a fantastic way to meet people and network, and we would love to see you there. You can get your tickets for both events at womeninthelawuk.com. If you'd like to support Talking Law podcast, then please do get in touch, and you can follow me on Twitter at SallyPenny1 and on Instagram, and follow on LinkedIn. And there's plenty of episodes of Talking Law for you to go and listen to, with guests including activist Gina Miller, criminal barrister Rob Rinder, the Right Honourable David Lammy, and so much more. Thank you so much to our production team at Purposeful Podcasts. I'm Sally Penny, MBE. Bye for now.